Welcome to the Real Turf Techs podcast for the technician that wants to get real. Follow along as we talk to industry professionals and address hot topics that we all face. Along the way, we'll learn tips and tricks. I'm your host, Trent Manning. Let's have some fun. This episode of Real Turf Techs on Golf Course Industries Superintendent Radio Network is presented by Foley Company, a strong supporter of equipment technicians and golf course maintenance departments everywhere. Foley Company offers a proven solution for above and below the turf for turf professionals everywhere. To learn more about Foley Company's line of reel grinders, bed knife grinders, and the Air 2 G2 family of products, or to find a distributor, visit www.foleyco.com. Foley, ready for play. Welcome to the Real Turf Techs podcast, episode 117. Today we're talking to Nate Lyon, equipment manager at the club at Indian Creek in Elkhorn, Nebraska. Indian Creek is a public 27-hole facility and the host for the Korn Ferry Tour's Pinnacle Bank Championship. Nate is the only full-time tech through the growing season with an off-season assistant from the crew. Let's talk to Nate. Welcome, Nate, to the Real Turf Techs podcast. How you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll get right into it. How did you get into the turf industry?
Well, there could be cliff notes. There could be a long story here. We can go either direction. But
Well, this is an audio podcast, so you can make it as long as you want it to be.
Well, I do tend to talk and ramble, so I'll try to keep it in the middle somewhere.
Well, I want to know do you ramble more than Jordan Roth?
So let's talk about that for a second.
Okay, yeah.
So Jordan and I have created a good friendship inside and outside of work-related talk material. I have gotten in trouble with my wife a few times because I talk with Jordan on the phone more than I talk with her.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So
I can believe that.
We are both heavy talkers, and we go down the rabbit hole together on everything we talk about. So I'm going to say it's a close tie on that one.
Okay, that's all good. And yeah, just for anybody listening, I love Jordan. Just giving him a hard time. He's a good dude, man.
Absolutely.
But yeah, tell us your story.
I got started. I actually was listening, and I kind of like you. I don't pronounce names all that well sometimes, but a gentleman named Jeff you talked to a few weeks ago. I was in the Air Force as well. I was a little bit different of a career field than he was in. My name doesn't get on the side of the plane.
Okay.
But I was a jet engine back shop mechanic for the B-1 bomber. So that I don't work on the flight line or in the hangar or anything like that. They pull the engines off, send them to our shop, and that's where we tear them down and do repairs. So that's where I really found my love for turning wrenches. Did that for a few years, and after I got out of the Air Force, I decided that I wanted to just try some automotive mechanic, and I did that for a while. Worked at a couple dealerships, Dodge and Chevy both. Then I was living in Texas at the time, and I was ready to move back to North Carolina, which is where I'm from. I grew up in the Winston-Salem, Pilot Mountain area.
Okay.
And I just got into doing lawn care at that point. I was fine not busting my knuckles on cars anymore. And I did lawn care for a few years and found out that there's not a lot of money to be made in the wintertime. So having that said, I jumped on Craigslist. I found an ad for a crew member at Greensboro Country Club there in North Carolina and started working there full time. And it didn't take long till I determined that was the environment I wanted to be in.
Okay, cool.
It's one thing to go out and mow 10 or 12 yards in a day, but to go out and take pride in the golf course day in and day out really appealed to me. So I started going down the superintendent route there. I worked my way up in a couple of years and made it to second assistant, made it to first assistant, and then did some traveling. And I went to Florida, worked as an assistant down there. Went to Colorado, Country Club of the Rockies, worked as an assistant out there as well. And then I moved to Texas. I was trying to get a feel for all the different grass types out there. So I'm not just a cool season guy. I'm not just a warm season guy. But I worked as an assistant at Twin Creeks Golf Course there in Allen, Texas, and then got a superintendent's job at Plantation Golf Club, or Golf Resort, I believe is the proper term, in Frisco, Texas. But by the time I got that job, I was I come to the realization that I miss turning wrenches. And those last two courses I worked at, we didn't have a mechanic, and I kind of assumed that dual role and really fell back in love with it. And the long hours, working weekends, hand watering, all of that was not what I wanted to do, and not my wife and I were engaged at the time, and we knew that we were wanting to get towards having kids one day. And I decided that it would be a good career move for me to shift to being an equipment manager to try to get some more at home time for when
Mm-hmm.
that did happen. I didn't want to wait until we had kids and then decide I need to change something. I want to go ahead and be proactive and change it ahead of time. But so I had started hunting for a job, and I found this one. I'm at Indian Creek, and I've really nestled in over here and found my way. But this is what I was meant to do, and this is it.
That's awesome, man. That's a really good story. So this is this your first EM
It is, yeah.
job,
This
pretty
I've
much?
been
Okay.
there 16 months now, and so
Okay.
I've gotten my feet pretty wet. Um, it's been a growing period for sure, just adjusting,
Mm-hmm.
but it's been a good one.
Well, I imagine coming over. I mean, you already had a big golf maintenance background, so coming over to the shop, and you already know how to turn wrenches, so kind of shoe in for that setup.
And I was, like I said, at my previous two courses, we didn't have mechanics there. And I was new to that side of the industry, the EM side. So I didn't have resources as far as other EMs to contact and things like I just didn't know anybody on that side of the industry. So I can go out and say I'm one of those YouTube taught mechanics. There's quite a few videos out there. I know Toro specifically has a lot of in-depth
Mm-hmm.
videos on reel setup and things like that. And that's really how I taught myself. But I never felt like I had a firm grasp on everything, but it was kind of a learn as you go experience. And then when I got to where I am now, I feel like I was really able to dial all that in. I'm no by no means anywhere near the level I want to be at.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
you got everybody has to start somewhere.
Absolutely, but I feel like I'm at a really good spot, and I've got the resources where I'm at to do well.
I've been doing this for quite some time now, and I still ain't where I want to be.
That's right.
I mean, we're learning every day. And I think, and most of the listeners can probably agree with this. That's the reason we love doing what we're doing because, yeah, some of the stuff's monotonous. We're doing it all the time, but we get to learn every day.
Absolutely.
And, if you don't learn something that day, that's on you because you can learn something every day, big or small, whatever it is. So, how welcoming was the Nebraska guys?
I'll tell you what, it was a very nice experience to be a part of. When I initially moved to Texas, it was a very different environment, different types of people. I lived in Florida, with South Florida specifically, outside the Fort Lauderdale area, where people were not very warm to have you in their area if
Mm-hmm.
you're not from there. But when I landed in the Omaha area, it was a very warm welcoming. Me and my wife both fell in love with it immediately. The personalities of the people here is hands down some of the best in the country. It's like that southern charm that I grew up with, but it's
Mm-hmm.
in the Midwest, so to speak. So
Okay. Yeah,
um,
that's awesome.
it's good. And as far as in the industry goes, it didn't take long. I think I was only at the course about 4 months before we had like a regional. We have a potluck dinner once a year or lunch once a year. A bunch of other EMs and
Mm-hmm.
superintendents and assistants from all around the area come up, and we just have a big potluck lunch and make a day of it. And that's when I got the opportunity to meet quite a few guys. I got to meet Jordan and Brian Eplin, Brian
Mm-hmm.
Nocky, Brandon, quite a few people, and we immediately developed good relationships and have just hit it off and been doing well ever since. So it's been a real warm welcome here, and I've loved it.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Y'all definitely have a really good group up there. And I do think it says something about you, your personality, whatever it is, that, I come up there and Brian says, "You want to see some shops?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm all down for that." And you're on the list. And I know there's a bunch of other golf courses around there, but they feel comfortable with you. So, yeah, Nate's a good dude. Let's go over there. So that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, and in that, I guess you got to hear or you got to see the mechanic's Christmas tree. I saw something about that the other day, but that's been the talk of the town the last 6 months. It seems.
Okay.
I guess for people that don't know, I don't know if you've added it to your presentation yet or not,
Yeah,
but
actually, it made the tips and tricks presentation.
nice.
The
Yeah,
funnel Christmas tree.
yeah. I don't know if that's going to be a seasonal institution or stick around year round, but it's there. So.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, and I mean it's a super good idea. I've seen it. Yeah, for the listeners, if you don't know what we're talking about, Nate had the old catch drum like you would see in a shop that you would roll under, a piece of equipment or whatever to drain the oil. He had that drum that was on casters, and then he made a PVC tree so you could put the funnels in it. Did I explain that correctly enough?
I believe so. Yeah,
All right. And I've seen those in, several different places, people doing that. And I mean, it's one of those things we struggle with. What do you do with your funnel? Where are you going to let it drip? So
absolutely.
that contains it all right there.
Well, I'll say the one thing with that for that specifically, that one thing that made me want to make it into a fashion where it's on wheels was as we talked about when you came to visit. The shop is constantly evolving. I'm constantly moving things around and just I've only put in one full season at this course, so I don't know exactly what layout's going to work best for me. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to mount anything on the wall that wasn't going to stay there or could possibly be moved. Um, so I wanted the flexibility to be able to move things around from time to time, just and see what works best before I come with a permanent location for something. And it's moved quite a few times,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean it's also moved right to the lift and as well. I got 15 different funnels in that thing. You never know which one you're going to need, and all right there within an arm's reach of where the oil fill hole is. So it's come in handy being on wheels.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think it is, in my opinion, nobody has a shop that's too big, right?
Absolutely,
It doesn't matter how big your space is, you're going to fill it up with
you
whatever you
always
got.
need more.
Yeah, you always need more. So at my shop, 90% of the stuff is on casters. If I can get it on a caster, it's going to get on a caster so I can roll it around. I mean, my reel grinders, they're permanent, but pretty much everything else rolls around in there. I mean, even, my workbenches, they're on casters. It just makes it so much easier if you want to clean, mop the floor, whatever. You roll that stuff out and get to it.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
Well, what's your least favorite part of the job?
Well, besides sand, my least favorite thing is avoidable repairs. Really irks me for guys that are just careless and tear things up for no reason. All they had to do is pay attention and know what they're doing, and things could be avoided. Um, there's we fight battles every day of things that break, and that's our job. But when it's things that very easily could have been avoided, like smacking a reel into a curb driving down the cart path or a bridge post, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. If somebody was just paying attention to what they were doing, it wouldn't have become an issue. And those are the types of things that really get under my skin. But at the end of the day, I'm going to fix it either way. But it's just aggravating.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And then the people that say, oh, that's job security for you. That absolutely gets under my skin so
Oh,
bad.
I know it. I agree.
Because at all these courses, if no one ever broke anything, we still got plenty of job security. We're not going to
Absolutely.
run out of things to do. There's
Absolutely.
always, grease that needs to go in a fitting, or an oil needs to be changed, or something needs to be cleaned. I mean, we don't run out of stuff to do.
Yeah, you're right about that. There's never a shortage of work.
We might run
And
out of stuff that we want to do, but not that we can do.
absolutely. And speaking of running out of things to do, and that's kind of a segue into one of my least favorite things is when, like, we have summertime crew or whatever you want to talk about, but they come in the wintertime and they just come by to visit and chat with you for a little while. Their impression or their thought is that you've just been relaxing all winter long. I don't know what the climate's like where you're at, but for us, we're pretty well shut down for the winter. So 90% of our crew's seasonal, but they come in, stroll in the door, and act like we've been sitting here for 4 months or 3 months, and that's not how it goes. I sometimes lean to think that I have more work to do in the winter than I do in the summer.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I've seen it before. I mean, a lot of the courses in your area and north of there, I mean, that's go time. That's when you get all your stuff serviced and,
Absolutely.
real sharp and, whatever it is, changing out lift arm bushings, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, always something to do.
Always something. Well, what's your favorite tool?
Well, I'm going to put a blanket on this and just say lifting devices.
Okay.
I am a strong advocate for not working on the ground. Being in the automotive world and being in the industry that we're in now, I've seen too many mechanics and superintendents and everybody that gets to that age, they're 55, 60 years old and they got back pain, shoulder pains, knee problems. And I've been very diligent about preventing that from happening to myself. So having a good lift is probably number one for me, and number two is going to be the like a davit crane or a hoist, if you will, for lifting
Mm-hmm.
reels up onto a workbench. I've got one inexpensive. I mean, relatively inexpensive, but it's been a lifesaver. The first
Mm-hmm.
first course I worked at turning wrenches, it was picking reels up off the floor and putting them on a workbench and just straining your back and I did that 2 or 3 times and I had put a hoist in at that shop. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't something I'm willing to do. You got to preserve your body and your mind just as long as you can.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a very great point. What do you do to relax or find your balance?
There's quite a few things. So my wife and I bought a new house. I guess it was 8 or 9 months ago. We've got a 4 acre property about 45 minutes north of where the course is, and so in the summertime, I'm doing a lot of work outside. Just like most of us in this industry. I mow my yard way too often. I'm probably 3 or 4 times a week. I just got
Yeah.
to keep it as nice as I can. But I'm always working outside. I'm an avid NASCAR fan. Me and my wife both love to. Every Sunday we're sitting down watching the race.
Okay.
That's a non-negotiable thing for Sunday afternoons for us. Um, but outside of that, the only other thing is I've very recently, purchased a CNC plasma table, and just received it last week. Got it set up in the garage, and I'm starting to mess around with it, tweak it, and learn all the settings and everything else. And it's going to be a hobby, and it's also maybe something to make a little bit of side money with. But it's going to be a fun adventure to really learn that thing and learn how to hone everything in on it.
Oh, yeah. No, that's awesome. So, yeah, we got to talk about this a little bit
Oh, let's do it.
because I mean it's definitely on my wish list. It's not super high on my wish list, but it's one of those things. If I run across the right deal, I'd probably jump on it.
That's right.
So, how thick of material can you cut?
So it all depends on what actual plasma cutter you're running on these. You can cut whatever the plasma tape or the plasma cutter itself is capable of running.
Okay.
On mine particularly, it's up to half-inch thick.
Yeah, yeah, that's plenty.
I don't think I'll ever need to run anything that heavy in there.
Mm.
But like for now, I'm still working on my first sheet of metal, just doing little test cuts and everything else, and I'm running 16 gauge, which is .06, and I've been playing around with that, and the versatility is amazing. I mean, there's just so much you can do with it. Anything from home decor to making brackets or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the possibilities that are with it. And it's a 4 foot wide table. It's about 33 inches deep as far as the
Okay.
cut space. I mean, my first inclination when I go to buy one of these is, all right, I want a 4x8. I want to put big sheets on here and cut out
Mm-hmm.
big, awesome stuff. That's when the price really starts to go up on getting into this type of stuff.
Yeah.
But also I did quite a bit of research as I do with any big purchase, and realized that it wasn't practical. Not many people ever need a table that big.
Mm-hmm.
So the 4x3, I bought it's the Langmeyer Systems CNC plasma table, and it's a great machine. And this is kind of their middle of the road package. They've got the big 4x8. They've also got a small, like I believe it's a 2x2 table. It's going to be a good machine. I can see that already, and I'm ready to get it working right. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
cutting
yeah.
stuff, and it looks good, but it can always be better.
So, what kind of software do you use to
So
run it?
I've got Fusion 360 that I'm using for all my CAD and my CAM. So I do all my design work in there, and then I
Mm-hmm.
do all of my programming and G code creation also in there.
Okay.
Same thing like you would on a 3D printer,
Yeah.
which I about 3 years ago, I had a 3D printer for a while and did a lot of messing around with that and made some pretty cool stuff. And so that kind of got me familiar with Fusion 360 at that point because that's what I used. And then I
Mm-hmm.
discontinued my subscription, but now I reinstated that, got a new one going, and so I already had a little bit of experience with it. It's a pretty complicated program for somebody
Oh
that,
yeah.
even
Yeah.
myself, I'm still blown away by what the capabilities are of it, but
Mm.
and I'm just scratching the surface. But it's it's cool. I like it.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, we will continue the podcast at some point, but I'm currently trying to learn Fusion 360. I 3D printed my first part ever that I designed in Fusion 360, and it was a really complicated part. It was a disc that was 5/8 diameter, and it had a countersunk hole in it.
There you go.
But I mean that took me like 4 hours, right?
Circle,
Because
circle, extrude. Call it a
right,
day.
right, right.
Yeah, yeah,
But anybody that's has tried to learn Fusion 360 could probably understand. Yeah, it's not as simple as click this and click that and you're done. Well, it could be once you learn the program.
yeah. Oh, and there's keyboard shortcuts and all that. And I'm like, I tried to watch YouTube videos on Fusion 360, and I can't remember all those keyboard shortcuts. And there's
Mm-hmm.
so many people on there that have videos on it. It's overwhelming to find the video for you because 90% of the people that post videos about Fusion is way more in depth than anything I would ever need. So
Right,
you've got
right.
to filter through all the stuff you don't need to get to the one you do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you real quick, a funny little thing. I made a little sign for one of my guys at work, and I drew it up in Fusion 360, no problem. I had created the G code, everything looked great. I uploaded into the what's called Fire Control, software that controls the table, and
Mm-hmm.
it starts cutting, and it had inverted the image. So on the plasma cutter, your good surface is the top. When it cuts, it's a clean
Yeah,
cut.
yeah.
The bottom is where all the dross or slag builds up.
Mm-hmm.
So it cut it out upside down. So when I took the piece off and flipped it upside down, the ugly side was what you could actually read. And so it took a little bit more grinding and cleanup work to get it right. But I could not figure out for the life of me why it did that, why it inverted that one when the other things I've cut I haven't run into that problem. So that's another rabbit hole to dive down with Fusion and whatever, and just try to figure out that problem. But I don't know that I'll ever figure it out. I might, but we'll see.
Well, right, and there's probably one checkbox somewhere, that
Yeah,
got checked by accident, or whatever, or it
yeah.
automatically checked for some reason when you done another operation. I mean, that stuff's crazy.
It's easy to make a mistake in there for sure.
But it is. I mean, I got just the free version, and it's amazing what all you can do with it.
Absolutely.
So, is the paid version? Do you have to, I guess, pay for it to get the cam side of it?
I'm not entirely sure. So I'm
Okay.
like I said, I just got this table last week, so I'm in the first month free trial. So I don't know if I'm experiencing the free version right now and there's more to come, or if I've already got the paid version. But I don't know. I
Okay.
can't answer that for you. But
Yeah. Well, I'll have to go to YouTube and get YouTube certified.
well, I'll tell you now, and this for anybody that's messing with this type of stuff. The best YouTube channel I found is Spicer Designs. He does a lot of CNC plasma work at home, but he goes into his Fusion 360 stuff not so in depth that it'll overwhelm you, but enough that you can kind of understand. And it's more a lot of his conversation, if you will, is talking you into how to post process, how to get it into G code and things like that, so
Hmm.
that it's a usable file. A little bit in the design.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's super cool. And yeah, for anybody listening, it's not like you have to know this stuff, but I do think it's where the industry is going. Me and
Absolutely.
J.R. Wilson's talked about it before. I think at some point, Toro and Deere and Jake, they're going to send you a file and you're going to 3D print a part, right there in your shop. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're going to get their royalties off of it too, of course. But, it's just another tool you can add to the toolbox, whether it's
Absolutely.
plasma cutter, 3D printer, CNC machine. Because I got router CNC machine, and we make all our signs for the golf course.
Oh, cool.
So I'm, pretty confident in that part with the G code, but it's a whole different design and CAM program than Fusion 360.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there too.
Yeah. All right, enough. I guess with all that stuff, but I
I
love it.
told you I'd talk about as much as Jordan can.
Yes, yep. No, it's all good. What's your What's been your biggest challenge to date?
That's a pretty difficult question to answer for me.
Hmm.
I tend to not really dwell on anything negative in my life, and not to say that a challenge is negative because challenges are good. But I don't try to remember those as much as the
Mm-hmm.
wins. But I will say one thing that's been a challenge for me, and I think anybody that's worked at multiple courses or multiple jobs, period, in their life can attest to this. I've always been one of those people. When I get a job, I go somewhere. I like to talk about things I've done at previous golf courses. So sitting around talking about X, Y, and Z, and I'll be like, well, when I was in Texas, this is what we did, or when I was in Florida, this is what we did. And I really had to make a conscious effort to not do that, or at least reduce how much I did that, because I felt like I was coming off in a way I didn't want to. So really trying to respect the boundaries and understand that wherever I'm working, whether it's at Indian Creek or anywhere else, they have systems in place. They've been doing this for years, way
Mm-hmm.
longer than I've been in this industry. As a whole, I've been in this industry about 8.5 years, maybe
Mm-hmm.
9. But so sometimes I just need to slow down, take a step back, and realize the ways I've done things in the past don't always correlate. And so that's been a challenge because I think that goes for anybody. The things that you've done before you get to where you're at now stick with you, and you like to recall those memories and try not to forget them by talking about them. But sometimes it's best to
Mm-hmm.
just not bring them up.
Yeah, I don't know. I totally understand what you're saying because when I'll tell you the story, how to let you know how I get it. I said to a superintendent one time that over at such and such course, they do this. And he said, "You want to go work for them?"
Yep.
You know? And that wasn't my intent at all. It was just, like the old saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Right?
Absolutely.
So maybe it's worth looking at a different method. Just because I've been doing it this way for 25 years, that don't mean it's the best way. There might be a better way.
Absolutely.
So, but I do think definitely the older people in the industry, that's been in the industry for 25, 30 years, however long, they're not really open to doing things like they probably should be,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know? But so, yeah, I mean, I understand. And I mean, that's definitely a big challenge. Do you have a mentor in the industry? And you
And I,
can't say Jordan.
you took it from me. No, so when I was in the agronomy side, Doug Lowe, who was my director of agronomy in North Carolina at Greensboro Country Club, he was a huge part of me getting into this industry, and he supported me and gave me the guidance I needed to move into this industry. So I could never discount that relationship. He was a big factor. But now that I'm into the equipment management side of things, that's evolved, and I can't say. I mean, I guess I can't say Jordan, but
You can. You can say
I know
Jordan. I'm
I'm not.
teasing.
What I would say though is there is no one mentor I've had. It's been a community,
Hmm.
specifically where I'm at. As you saw when you came up to visit,
Yeah.
we're a tight knit group up here, and I think that's the same in a lot of areas all throughout the country. But um, it's 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 been one of those situations where I can lean on anybody in the area. I can call Jordan. I can call Brian. Both both Brians, so to speak.
Hmm.
I think there's 7 of them in Omaha.
Yeah. Right. There's quite a few.
And I can call Brandon. I mean, there's quite a few people I can call whenever I run into something that I really get stuck with or need advice on. Then the WhatsApp group has been tremendous. I haven't been excessively active in talking on there, but
Hmm.
I've absorbed a lot from it, and it's been a very useful tool for me. So really, if I had to name a mentor, I'm just going to say this industry as a whole has been my mentor through this,
No, that's awesome. That's
and
so good.
I like it that way.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's super cool. And I want all the listeners to hear this. So you are fortunate in Nebraska. We're fortunate down here in Georgia. The guys in South Florida, I know they got a good thing going. There's, T-TAC and the Carolinas, they're awesome. Michigan's got good stuff going on. And I mean, there's other little pockets here and there throughout the country that's doing good. But there's a bunch of huge pockets that there's nothing happening in. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, think about starting something. Whether it's just call the guy or gal down the road from you and say, "Hey, let's have lunch," or "Let's go get a beer after work," or whatever it is. And that's how it starts. Two people, and then you invite somebody else, and then you got three. And it just keeps
Absolutely.
growing.
And I think going back to what Eplin and Jordan both were saying, they did the same thing. They made it happen. They just made a couple of phone calls and started recruiting people to be involved in it, and that's how our little group has come to be. And
Mm-hmm.
it it's not exclusive to us. We're not the only ones that are able to do this. Just like you're saying, anybody can get a group going if they want to build those relationships, network professionally and personally.
Mm-hmm.
It's You just got to make the move. Somebody has to make that first step.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the point I'm trying to make. That person that's listening to this podcast right now might be that person. You're the one. Just
Absolutely,
just reach out to somebody and get something going. And I don't know. I've heard it from Tim Krieger a lot. He's the executive director of the Carolina Association, and he heard it from somewhere else. But it's about the people, and just like you and Jordan becoming friends, I mean, it's awesome. So, yeah, you can get, technical assistance from Jordan, but you also made a friend. And how important is that? And as a male in the industry, you know, a lot of us are pretty closed off and we don't have a whole lot of friends. I mean, we might have a lot of people we talk to, but, true friends, that's a whole different deal. I
absolutely,
mean, I know a ton of people and I talk to a ton of people, but I could count on one hand my true friends that, I talk to regular and deeper conversation and all that stuff. So,
absolutely.
anyway, I'll get off that soapbox. What would be your dream job or opportunity?
From day one when I started out as an assistant or crew member, I always had this aspiration to work at a top 100 club, and I think that every assistant, every superintendent, every EM probably at some point or another has had that aspiration. Um, we have a top 100 club here in Nebraska that I'm a big fan of. I haven't played it, but I've visited it, and that's Sand Hills out in Mullen. I'd like to get out there at some point, and it's an area where there's not a whole lot out there, but that appeals to me. And it's not exclusive to Sand Hills. There's plenty of courses out there. I really like working in high end environments, and where I'm at now is working towards that. We pride ourselves at our facility on being one of the best there is in the area. Eventually, our goal is to be one of the best in the country as far as public daily fee courses goes, and I'm proud to be a part of that team. So the longer that I stay where I'm at now, and the more that I may not want to go anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I might have my dream job, but um, that's we'll see what happens in the future with that.
I remember interviewing Mike Elliott. And Mike Elliott was the EM at, man, it's going to be a lot of editing. Mike Elliott was the EM at Pine Valley.
Okay,
And Pine Valley and Augusta kind of flip back and forth, 1 and 2 every year.
yeah,
And when I interviewed him, he was saying his aspiration was to be the equipment manager at Augusta National. Like, soon as he started turning wrenches at a golf course, he says, "I want to be the equipment manager at Augusta National." And then he got to Pine Valley. And I said, "You're still thinking about that?" And he's like, "No, No, kind of been there, done that. I don't have to go to
You're
Augusta
pretty
now.
much there. You're good.
Yeah. You're plenty close enough.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
so yeah, I mean, I think it's great, and I do agree. I think and I've thought about it. I would really like to work at a top 100, and then I think about it more and say, I don't know. At this stage in my career, for sure. 10 years ago, I was all over it, and I was really hoping my course would hit that top 100 mark. And I mean, it's a pretty high end, nice course. We were always in the top 10 of Georgia until recently, and they've added a few clubs, and a few clubs have had renovations and those things. So we've slipped a little bit. What technician would you like to work with for a day?
That's another one that I had to think long and hard about, and I don't think I could point out any one person. I think I would just like to experience. Everybody has their own way, and part of like you traveling and doing your talks and things like that, and sharing the knowledge you learn from other people is a great asset, a great resource for all of us. But I'd like to just work with a variety of people. Um, but I'd love to get on like a tour event and volunteer. Um, Go to East Lake or somewhere like that, or Bethpage. Any of them really. Anywhere on the
Mm-hmm.
tour would be great. Just to experience that next level, to really get an understanding of how things work at a different type of environment.
Yeah, well, I would say go do it, because I mean those opportunities are there. Anytime you want to go volunteer someplace, you reach out to them. You can get your foot in the door. That shouldn't be an issue at all. And they're always looking for volunteers and all those things. And you get way more out of it than you put in, for sure. And not that it's not hard work and long days and hours and all those things, but I mean, the people you meet and the things you learn is just nothing like it. What do you know now you wish you'd known on day one?
I tell you, I mean, we've already kind of brushed on this a little bit, but the one thing that I wished I'd known beforehand, before even getting into this industry, was just how tight knit this industry is. I've worked automotive mechanic, and I worked at O'Reilly Auto Parts. I worked in a couple different environments, and your competitors are your competitors, and that's where the
Mm-hmm.
line is drawn in the sand, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
when I get into this industry and I find out how open everybody is, yeah. So there's a golf course right down the street that's a competitor of ours, but we don't treat each other like competitors.
No.
We're a community of service to the golf courses in the area,
Mm-hmm.
and that I wished I had known that sooner and found out about this industry sooner. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of waiting until I was in my 30s to get into this career field, I would have done it in my 20s or even earlier. That's what I wished I had known beforehand was how much of a family this.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And yeah, don't say anything bad about somebody because it gets around quick.
Yes, it does.
Um, and vice versa. You can say something good about somebody, and that gets around quick too. And,
Absolutely.
that's a tremendous thing. Get ready for tips and tricks. What kind of tips and tricks you want to share with us?
But that's safety wiring nuts and bolts. I don't. Have you ever had
Ah,
any experience in that?
yeah, I have.
Okay.
But I will say I've never had any experience in that in the golf industry. And I need to add this to it. So I learned about safety wire with racing
Okay.
and race cars, a lot of vibration.
Yep.
And since I learned that, I have safety wire and safety wire pliers in my toolbox.
That's right. I do
And I
too.
don't know how many things that I've repaired or, got us through the day because of that.
They make a good hose clamp in a pinch too.
Well, right. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's all those little kind of things. But yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to derail you there.
Oh, you're
But
fine.
yeah,
You hit the nail on the head. Vibration. I've run into some old pieces of equipment, some courses I've worked at, that just would vibrate the teeth out of your head, and the bolts will vibrate loose. Lock washers don't always hold stuff, and it's pretty simple to get a little jig to drill a hole in the side of a bolt or through a nut or whatever, and safety wire it off to another bolt or to a frame or whatever.
mm-hmm.
It's been a very valuable tool, and if you have that on there and you do it right, you know that bolt's not coming loose.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. And the kid in me thinks it's a lot of fun to pull on
I
those pliers and twist it up.
I thought so too until I joined the military. So working in the jet engine back shop, there's thousands of bolts and screws on those engines, and 99% of them require safety wire. And
Mm,
you get graded on it, you get inspected by your supervisors. They have to sign off that you secured that one bolt particularly correctly.
yeah.
And it you do after doing that day in day out, because low man on the totem pole, that's what you're doing. You're safety wiring all day every day. It
Mm.
gets old real quick, but I haven't done it in a few years, and with the exception of the one or two odds and ends, but I'm starting to find enjoyment.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. So, do they count like the number of turns
They
in
count the number
between?
of turns. Yep, there has to be so many twists per inch. Um,
Okay.
you're only allowed to go a certain span between bolts. Even your pigtail that you fold over has to be a certain length.
Yeah.
They're pretty strict about it. Which I mean,
Well, yeah.
multi-million-dollar fighter planes and bombers, they need to be.
Right, right, right. Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. That's cool stuff. Any other tips or tricks? That was a
I
really
think
good
that's
one.
about it. But don't do safety wire with baling wire.
Oh, okay. Yes, probably a little
It'll
thick,
work,
huh?
harden, and snap real quick.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but no, I think that's the biggest one for me.
Awesome. No, that's a really, really good one. Yeah, and if you don't have some safety wire and safety wire pliers, get some, and you'll find a use for it somewhere here and there.
Amazon's your best friend.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They have the jig to drill the holes. They have everything on Amazon.
Cool stuff. What about tournament prep? You want to talk about some tournament prep?
Yeah, so we talked about I'd love to go to a tour event and volunteer and work with those guys, but um, where we're at Indian Creek, we do host the Corn Ferry Tours Pinnacle Bank Championship. So last year, my first season working here, first season as an EM, I was a little apprehensive about that coming.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it was just a matter of getting everything as dialed in as I could prior to the tournament coming to town. So I was nervous to say the least, but it ended up going really well. There was some hydraulic hoses that looked a little sketchy, a couple weeks leading up to it that I was like, you know what, just to be safe, I'm gonna go ahead and change these out. We did not want to blow out on that week.
Right,
Uh,
right.
got everything ground and sharpened prior to. Brandon from Stone Creek came over on a Sunday and helped me finish up knocking out some reels. That way I didn't have to grind anything during the week of.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm going to knock on some wood right now. We had a week of no problems.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I
yeah.
had, the only thing I really had to do throughout that week was just adjust reels. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we had one buffalo blower blow a nozzle off or knock a nozzle off. And
Well, that could be a everyday occurrence.
I know it. Well, this one was two guys behind each other blowing, and it's 5 in the morning. It's dark out, and one guy stops. The other guy was looking over his shoulder and plowed into the back of the other one. So it
Oh,
was it
yeah.
was comical. It was an easy fix, but that
Mm-hmm.
really we didn't have any breakdowns that week. Everything went smoothly, and the reason I knock on wood is because who knows, this up and coming year could be a disaster. But I feel like as long as I plan accordingly and
Mm-hmm.
prepare everything to the best of my ability, that's all I can do. And the tournament was a great experience. And this is another reason we talk about building those relationships within the community. Um, I had Brian Nocky, I had Jordan, I had Brandon from Stone Creek. I had quite a few guys volunteer their time and came and worked
Mm-hmm.
with me that week. It wasn't just there to fix anything that broke. It was there to be a part of the event, to socialize and to work, and it strengthened all of our relationships a little bit more. Because outside of that, we're always together in settings for meetings and things of that nature. And so it had a little bit more of a social aspect to it that was nice. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a great experience working a Corn Ferry event, and I look forward to doing it for quite a few more years. But
Yeah, no, that's
uh,
awesome.
at the same time, I want to do some volunteering at a big PGA tournament at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know who the Corn Ferry agronomist was?
I don't remember his name. I spent a decent amount of time with him, but I'm horrible with names as it is. But this was his last year. He retired. Actually, I believe our event was his last event. He was retiring after that,
Oh, okay. All
but
right.
I can't recall his name.
I know PJ, trying to remember his last name. It's like Rummendinger or something like that. That's kind of weird. But and I'm sure I butchered that too. Hopefully he's not listening. But anyway, he's a good dude, and I volunteered with him down in the Bahamas for a corn
Okay,
ferry
nice.
earlier this year in January. Yeah, I got the call. It was like, "You want to go to the Bahamas in January?" And I'm like, "Are you joking right now? Is this serious? You got to be kidding me, right?"
Uh,
And like, "No, I'm serious." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'm in. I'd love to
absolutely,
go to the Bahamas in January. It's the perfect time of the year to go."
absolutely.
Um, so yeah. Anyway, I don't know who your agronomist will be this year, but PJ's a good guy.
We'll see in a few months.
You ready to do some rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
All right. What's your favorite movie?
Dazed and Confused.
Oh yeah, that's a classic. Hadn't
That,
seen that in forever.
that's my number one and has been for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, it's good stuff.
Absolutely.
What would be your last meal?
Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and red lobster cheddar biscuits.
Oh, those Cheddar Bay
I'm
biscuits. They're
telling you,
awesome.
that's
Very,
the only
very
thing
good.
I like there. I'll go there to just eat their biscuits.
Oh yeah, yeah. Melt in your mouth. Good stuff. Well, what are you most proud of besides your family?
Just where I've made it in my life. For my late teens, all through my 20s, it was all a matter of not knowing what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're college age, that's normal. But when you're getting into your early 30s and you still don't have a career plan figured out for your life, you start to worry. And when I stumbled into this industry, it was like my calling, so to speak. And that,
That's
for
awesome.
me, that's what I'm most proud of. Just making it to
Yeah,
where I am and finally finding that career that spoke to me.
that's awesome, man. I'm so happy for you. This is cool. Very, very cool stuff. And you're not the only one. I mean, there's so many other people in this industry that feel the same way. And I do think it's because there is so many that feel the way you do and the way I do that just makes this industry that much better. And that's why when you call Jordan or Brian or whoever and say, "Hey, you help me with this," or "You seen this before?" I mean, we're all just willing to help. It's awesome. And that's why I'm doing a podcast. I pitched the idea to somebody else. I said, "You should do a podcast. I wouldn't mind helping you." And it fell on deaf ears. And I thought about it and I thought about it and I said, "We just got to do it." Because there's so many guys like you, like Jordan, like Brian, like Brian.
For hearing that.
But yeah, when you hear this, you'd already heard Brian's when you hear that episode. But yeah, just so many good people. Well, thank you so much, Nate, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
You tell the listeners how they could get a hold of you: email, Twitter.
I'm on Twitter. I haven't posted in a little over 2 years, but I am there. I do follow other people. N_Lyon_AGCS. And I am on the WhatsApp group. I think most of them. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I want to be as much of a resource for everybody else as everybody has been for me. So I might not always have the answer, but I can help you find it. So
Oh yeah.
don't
Well, I
hesitate to
think
reach out.
that's another really good thing is all of us have different backgrounds and all of us are really good at certain things. And I guarantee you there's somebody in that WhatsApp group that's better at one thing than you are. And me, I'm not calling you out, but
Yeah, yeah.
you know, that's what
It'd be
makes
okay
it
if you
so
did.
great. No, 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 not at all. Well, thanks again. I appreciate you being on and we'll talk soon.
All right, thank you, buddy.
Thank you so much for listening to the Real Turf Techs podcast. I hope you learned something today. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any topics you would like to discuss or you'd like to be a guest, find us on Twitter at Real Turf Techs. See you bye.